we're really excited about the fact that we are now celebrating 5 years, and that is nothing compared to some of the organizations that I've come across, as I'm sure you have, who are in their 75th or even 150th year of serving the Lord. But we have a culture of celebrating every step toward faith in the Lord and kingdom, and we want to celebrate all the good things that God has done. And we also are marveling at some of the things that God has let us do in that short amount of time. So we did include a section here on the fact that we are 5 years old and some of the things that God's allowed us to do. And I want to share those with you so that you have a sense of knowing a little bit more about the organization that you're a part of as well. I think that's important. Again, you want to have memorized what our mission and vision are. That is so important, that we are called to serve those who are called to serve Him, or called to serve those who are serving Him, and that we are also about seeing nationals reach the nations and communities around the world transformed by the love of Jesus Christ. And by now they should have heard that multiple times in the first and second step process. That should be something that they have agreed to even already. But again, go over it, and as elementary as it sounds, an active body is an active mind, I want to encourage you to get them to say it with you. And you may have to translate that, I'm aware, based on where you may be holding these candidate orientations or pre-field trainings. But still, if they're agreeing to what we're called to, they need to actually be able to say it. And it's something that we've made as short as we can. I don't think it's difficult to memorize at all. Now, a couple of principles, core values that are important, and how we're different. Remember that we're not authority-driven, but that we are accountability-driven. This is a good point where I like to let them know again, this is not the organization that's going to ask you for reports about how many people were saved and baptized, not even how many churches were planted. We tend to focus more on the story of the one thing that we've really seen happen that was truly evidence of the power of God at work. And that to us is far more important, because we want to see obedience in the missionaries' lives, and we want to drive toward that and hold accountable toward that over trying to raise money necessarily on the numbers and have reports that let people think that we're constantly doing things that we don't even know for sure if we are, because who knows what's in a man's heart. And I think that we can all say we've experienced some of that around the world, as people have perhaps been very focused on how many hands went up and how many professions of faith that they had, things of that nature. So we want to focus on being obedience-driven and not results-driven. So drive that point home. Again, nationals being reached by both fellow and similar culture nationals is the goal. Not merely what? Sending more Americans to other countries. So even though they may be Americans who are in your pre-field or candidate orientation, that's okay. That's great. We're trusting that by now they really are called by God to go do this, but we still need to help them understand that they're not the last stop. And as we look at our vision and our outline, we see that the nationals are the last stop. That's where we know that we have fulfilled what we're called to go do in a place, is when they then take the gospel and move forward and don't need us there to accomplish that. Now, that may not necessarily be that they move out of the country, but that they would focus on a different people group or a different location geographically, maybe a different demographic, things of that nature. So let's make sure that we're aware of that and that we are really nailing that concept and getting them involved in understanding that. Get them to point out some examples perhaps as you digest this as to when they've seen that go badly, when they've seen the opposite of that. Maybe you want to ask the question, how have you seen this not in place in other organizations? I think that's a helpful approach there. Also, balance is a core value. You can talk a little bit about that as far as being in line with a very creative God, but also a God of order in our organization. We really recognize that we're constantly working with what the government expects of us as a 501c3 here in the United States and in other places, as well as how we are kingdom operatives and free agents to do what the Lord tells us to do. And we have to balance these concepts, make sure that they sense the freedom to follow the Lord in that, but also are aware of the things that we have to be grounded in and organized in. So again, here's our structure that I was just talking about here. Spend some time on it. Get them to talk about what's different about it. What does it not look like? Where do they see that there is some level of authority? And where does it seem like it's different in regard to authority from other organizations? Does it look like a corporate model? Does it even look like a church model? And of course, you see the telescope there. So why is it a telescope, do you think? And why would we want to use that in their opinion? Get them conversing about that. It's a good thing. It doesn't have every single role in it, of course. That's not the point. The point is the overarching structure of the organization. And again, the concept is mission to vision. What we get up each day and put our boots on the ground to do should be our mission today, and it should be leading and building toward what the vision is that God has already given us. And of course, we'll talk about that in a whole section, helping them to do the same thing where God's called them as well. That's key. All right, so who do we serve? We recognize some people are called in the midst of having nothing more than a God-sized idea, and it's still in infancy, and they don't really know where to go from there. They just know that God's called. He's confirmed this. They don't have all the details. We're okay with that as an organization, and we want to walk people through what it is that God's doing in their lives to what the mission is that He has for them. However, we really do need to know that there is a clear testimony and calling and the beginnings of mission to vision. And of course, we have a statement of faith. If they have any questions about that, that'd be a good time in your training to go over that to see if there's any question they had regarding a particular doctrine, particular issue, denominationally, those kinds of things. As we are a non-denominational organization, but our background statement of faith, which we don't really make a huge deal about, but we do make people sign off on, really comes primarily out of the Baptist Faith and Message. And so that's an important distinction. So we are non-denominational, but we do have a statement of faith that is akin to and taken predominantly from the Baptist Faith and Message. All right, so we want to see that there's support of the local body of Christ as people continue toward their calling. We really don't want to see that they are being, in an American term, a lone ranger in this, that they are isolated in this, that nobody knows about this yet, but I want to pursue this mission agency. There could be some security reasons for some of that. There could be some issues with persecution, but from an American context, usually that means there's a problem in the relationship with the local church. There's a problem in the relationship that they have with maybe even biblical authority, and that can be a red flag for us. So something to talk about there. Do they have support in the local church? Are people aware of what God's called them to do? And those things should really be resolved by the time they're sitting at a candidate orientation, but it's still helpful to just talk about again. A couple of statistics for us. Again, just helpful things here, some numbers that you can go over. I'm not going to take time on those right now. And the response that we've had to the refugee crisis, giving that we've been able to respond to these crises with as a result of sometimes not being able to take trips because of the COVID crisis, for instance, and also because of raising distinct funds for certain projects. We do that. So it's not just about sending missionaries. We do respond also as God leads to the things that are happening around the world. Most of the time we're aware of those things because of people we're partnering with. So we don't involve ourselves with every possible crisis, obviously, nor seek to, but we do respond as the people that we know are being led by the Lord make us aware and then ask for help. And we are also, I believe I can say this with integrity, proud of the fact that we were responsible for spearheading the creation of Grayson County's Coalition Against Human Trafficking back in 2019. So we are involved in local mission as well and seeking to develop that more and more. So how have we served? And I like the way that this says this. Our people are diverse and lead a diverse array of humanitarian efforts worldwide. For example, in Sierra Leone, West Africa, we are completing the only school and dormitory for the mentally and physically disabled children that is recognized by the country's Department of Education. So we'll talk about this more in the training, but there really is a balance of Matthew 25 and Matthew 28, isn't there? And you have to marry those concepts. There's a sense of recognizing that there are good works that God has prepared for us to do. There are humanitarian efforts that are kingdom. But if you remove the gospel from them, then what fruit do they really bear? If there's no intent to share the gospel, then what is the eternal impact on that? Maybe someone is safe today, fed today, lives another day, but at the end of the day, what happens next? And if you only go in preaching and doing evangelism, but the people themselves are in danger of dying daily and are hungry, going, tell them, go away, be warm and filled, then have we really fulfilled what Jesus describes we're to do in the scriptures? And of course the answer is no. This goes back to the idea of balance that we talked about. So talk a little bit about that as well. Here's a list of areas where we've been involved and are seeking to be involved further. Good to go over, give them a chance to read through that, ask some questions. We've got a footprint in 30 countries that you're probably already aware of, and continuing to develop nationals to reach the nations. Again, a key point here. And so we have stopped counting at over 1,000 that we've trained. We just felt like the numbers could no longer maintain integrity. So once we knew for sure that there were 1,000 people that we had trained to go and train others, by the way, this is not people that we've trained in general or in mass crusade. These are smaller groups that are being equipped to then go and then train others. That's an important distinction, and you can go over that list with them as well. Again, go over the idea again that we're 0%, why we're 0%, and what we've seen in opposition to that. Maybe talk a little bit about what they've seen. What have they experienced in other organizations, or perhaps they came to us from another organization, and maybe they would share a little bit about what they've experienced in that as well. We had an outline here that is a little outdated now, things that we were raising money specifically for. We'll probably be removing that slide now that we're heading into 2022. Talking about transparency and making sure that people are aware of our finances and making sure that they can see what we're about and what it is that has transpired as we develop as an organization. We don't want to hold anything back. We're more than happy to share those things. So they can absolutely go and find out what our 990 is, or any of our finance statements like that are available. So we're not keeping anybody in the dark about those things. We want to make sure that people know they can trust us as an organization to be above reproach in that sense. Okay, so that is the 5-year overview, and of course there's a lot of things that you could look at there and go into great detail on. I would recommend that you make sure that they've seen that and are aware of that ahead of the orientation, and that you not take a real long time except for conversation. That should be more conversational than a lecture, more than just information giving about the organization, and more a sense of, why do you feel we did it this way? Or what do you see that's different than what you've experienced before? And if you were going to start an organization like GoSendMe Global, how would you have done it? Do you see anything here that's different than what you would have done? Good questions. Don't be afraid of those questions. Don't be afraid of people's ideas. This organization, for all intents and purposes, has been built on all the things that missionaries said not to do so that we could best serve them. I hope that's helpful to you. And I hope you have fun doing that overview time. Should be a good experience for you.